Welcome to Pussy Power. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Pussy Power. As you guys can tell, I'm incredibly excited today because we have an amazing guest. So we have Denise Diaz, who is a Filipino Army veteran who's served in the US Army. She's been deployed in Iraq, where she's seen different perspectives, challenges, and deaths. Like so many Filipino parents, her parents originally wanted her to be a nurse, and they actually gave her an ultimatum where she either became a nurse or she wouldn't have their support. And as a response, she ran away from home and decided to join the military. She is now managing a business in the hospitality industry, has just finished chemotherapy, and now seeks to help fellow Army veterans have a smoother transition from Army life to civilian life. Denise, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence.
Thank
We're
you
so
for
excited to
having
have
me.
you. Awesome. So I love that you're like Filipino. You're actually like she was saying hi in the hall before this interview, and I was like, woo woo woo, we're Filipino. So like what was it like? Because you guys immigrated to like the US and you're like first generation, right?
Correct.
Yeah. How was it like to be in a Filipino household and grow up in a Western culture?
Um, when I came from the Philippines, we first immigrated to California. There, I had quite a bit of Filipino friends, but shortly after, it was very short-lived and ended up moving to the South and in Texas, of which there's not very many Filipinos there or Asians for that matter. And it was challenging because the customs and courtesies, the food that we eat, how we're disciplined, what we can or cannot do, is very different from how the American kids got disciplined or what they can or cannot do. Or you get told, like they give you like a where you feel like the guilt trip if you want to go out with your friends and your parents are just like you're gonna find your clothes outside if you go.
How
Kind
was
of,
it like different in discipline? Was it like you guys got the physical end of the stick, or what was it like?
I got palo and batok and everything you could think of. I got smacked in the
Really?
head. You name it. I got whooped. I got my ass beat growing up.
Wow. And when you're like listening to how your friends got disciplined, was it like they just got grounded and they couldn't use their phone? Was that like the main difference that you guys
Yes,
got in discipline?
yes. Grounded, timeout, or no
Yeah.
TV, no phone, stuff like that. And it's like, must be nice.
Yeah. So you're like they got the nice end of the spectrum and you guys just had to like just endure the belts and like the ass
Yeah,
whooping.
here I am like running in my room and layering myself with like 3 pairs of sweats so that the sting wasn't gonna hurt.
Yeah. What was your relationship with your parents like?
Um, there really wasn't too much of a bond growing up. My parents worked a lot. They're both in the medical field. Surprise, surprise. Uh, and when they came here, they worked multiple jobs as well, and I really got to really see my parents. So whenever I grew up, my parents tried to spend more time with me, but as I got older, the less time I actually wanted to be around anymore.
Mm.
Yeah.
So when you were a kid, they probably like worked a lot to make give you guys more stability after having immigrated. Obviously, it's much cheaper here in the Philippines than it is in the States.
Right, right. Yes, that's part of it. And then I want to say that also that the thing is when you come to the States and then if you're like the only family member in the States, they bring money back home or pasalubong or whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it, back to the family. So that's surviving here, but also sending money to your family back home kind of thing. So that's why they was always working.
Wow. So they were still giving to your family here in the Philippines.
That's correct.
Did you have like opinions on that growing up? It's like, why the hell are my parents working overtime to give like money to our family in the Philippines? Like, did you have certain conceptions around what they were doing?
When I was like growing up, I kind of was just like, okay, whatever. Like they had it worse. I have memories of how I grew up in Laguna. So I had an idea of like what life was like growing up over there. So I didn't really say or complain too much. But over time, I guess as I got older, I was just kind of like, we all choose the life that we want. They're going to choose the life that they want, whether they're my cousins, stay in the Philippines or they go to Saudi, Japan, whatever it is that they're doing, and it's just like you can't always just enable them by always just being the fallback
Yeah.
because about a tita or auntie in the States that's gonna just give me money. Like I get it, but like I also understand that sometimes you have to have a little bit of tough love also. I mean, I ran away from home.
Yeah. So it's like everybody in your family kind of they kind of like assumes, at least they're assuming, that you guys have it better because you're in the US and like you're earning in US dollars. What was it like?
It's
What
funny
were
you say that though. I will say, let me guess. It's funny you say that though because where when I grew up as a teenager, I was in a small town in Texas. And over there, because Texas, the cost of living is a little bit cheaper than it is in California, to get a big house and have multiple vehicles is doable than it is here in California. However, being in that small town, very few people are able to make a high income. The thing over there is that my parents or my family, I guess you'd say, people questioned if we were like sending gold or drugs to the Philippines because we we had money to send to the Philippines and have a house and still have a house here. So it's kind of silly to hear that that's like what some of the American kids that I grew up around would say, but it is what it is. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous.
so they just didn't know that your parents had like solid work ethic and were working their asses off so that you guys could send money.
That, and I don't think they realized that the currency from dollar to pesos was a
Yeah,
big
it's
difference.
ridiculously low. Like
Yeah,
Philip, like your $1 here in like the Philippines, that's literally like $2 is like one cab ride to a nearby mall, which is like I imagine that's like so cheap compared to how much cab fares are in the US. Your Uber.
right. It is like an Uber to just go out to a bar downtown, which is 15 minutes from where I'm at right now in San Diego, would probably be $20-$30 here.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that's equivalent to in pesos, but I'm sure it's over there it's cheaper, I'm sure.
That's like 2 hours of cab ride here in the Philippines. So we definitely have it better in terms of currency, anyways. What was it
Right.
like growing up in Laguna? Because you said you had a couple memories there and you like being able to, live in the US, you had this understanding and this knowledge that you had it better because you had memories in Laguna. What was it like?
Um, in Laguna, I have memories of crying to my mom to boil me hot water because I didn't want to bathe in cold water. Um, I remember my titas always, when I was a little kid, that we had a little creek where me and my cousin, when we were little, we would pee and poop, and she would just use a towel and wash us and stuff. Like it was perfectly normal to be, standing outside near a little shack and just washing. And that's one of the fondest memories I had as a kid because even like now, I have no problem getting wet outside and just wash my car and do whatever I do outside because to me it was normal because I did in the Philippines. Like, I don't care, I'm here, but and it's probably why it was easy for me to adjust in this military to not have stuff accessible, but still managed when it came to bathing or doing anything as far as hygiene went in the Philippines, because in Iraq it was a little different.
Mm.
So that was one of the memories I had, and then just being able to ride a little tricycle. But my mom would always tell me to be quiet because when I came to visit, the minute they heard me speak English, they would jack the prices up.
Really? Oh, right. Of course.
Yeah,
It's like
so but the thing
commensurate.
is
Yeah, yeah,
that
totally.
I understand Tagalog, so eventually like I figured it out, but me being a kid didn't know any better. I was just kept talking.
Yeah. 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 I get that. Right now you're done with the military service, just for contact for people who are listening. But so like when you were a kid, you were already pretty rebellious. Like you already had this like, okay, mom, whatever. Was that like rebellious? Like, what do you call yourself? Like a rebellious kid? Like having some.
Yeah, my parents said I was rebellious. Then again, I question a lot of Filipino kids my age or growing up from 90s to 2000s if their parents had the same guilt trip of like you're being rebellious because you talk back, being rebellious because you don't listen, you're failing in school. Like I honestly don't think I was a rebellious child, but because I compared myself to the American kids.
Mm,
Um, but like I wasn't out doing drugs or doing anything crazy growing up. I wasn't like I forget to take out the trash because I was watching TV.
yeah.
Like
That's
it's
kind of
just
like,
stuff
yeah,
like that. But I was considered rebellious because I always did the opposite. And I think I was always just kind of like one of those people where it's like try me, but only
yeah.
because my parents were always like, what's the word? Like, mark my word. And I'm like,
It's it's weird because they're still like comparing you to Filipino values despite you growing up in a completely different culture.
yeah, right. They also would also say, uh, you are who you hang around with your friends. And I had different groups of friends, whether they were the athletes, they were the popular kids, or the punk kids, the emo kid. Like I had a very diverse group of friends. I never stayed in certain cliques, as you'd call it. But I knew that if I hung out with certain unmannered, what not so well dressed kids and their parents were not educated, then it's like heaven forbid I turn out like that.
Ooh. So they
Yeah.
had this kind of like concept of what they wanted you to become very early on.
Yes.
And it's so funny because we talked about this when we weren't recording a couple, I think that was last week. And you said that they just saw you as a nurse and that's it. When did they start kind of like, I guess imposing would be the right word because you never really wanted it. When did they kind of start imposing that, like, this is what you're going to be?
I think it was when I was as a kid, because I would always be like, oh, I want to be a cop. I want to be a chef. I want to do this. I'd always try to figure out what I wanted to do and focus on. And every time I'd be like, oh, I want to do this. And then they'd just be like, how are you going to, what was that? I wanted to be a chef. And like, how are you going to be a chef? You don't even cook. You don't even cook the rice. You don't even remember to turn the rice cooker on. And I'm like, seriously?
Yeah.
But the thing is that everything I ever wanted to do, they would shut down. And I didn't forget. But now that I'm grown up, I laugh about it and I'm really annoying with my parents about it now, is that I was like, you guys would always be like, how are you gonna survive on your own? Most of the girls in the Philippines, they know how to cook for themselves and take care of their mother. And what can you do? But the thing is that now I'm like, I manage a restaurant. I can cook X, Y, and Z. I could do this. And it's like, you remember when? And then I was like, I can't, you say that I can't survive and who's gonna cook for me or how I'm gonna feed myself. I can go out to eat whenever I want now. I can cook whatever it is. I can even be creative with it. And it's like you said that I wouldn't be able to survive on my own. So it's not like me just throwing it in their face, but it's just like you always said I couldn't do this. So every time they say I couldn't, I did the opposite.
Their message, like obviously, which comes from, love with a little bit of fear, isn't taken the way they would have wanted it to be taken, because they're now imposing stuff on you that you didn't
Right,
sign up for, and you're just like, no, fuck this shit.
right.
Yeah.
Right. They did that, and I think my struggle was trying to get my own mother to understand that you cannot make me do something that I don't have a passion for or give two shits about, really, because I my concentration is not all there. If you really wanted me to concentrate on it, I'm gonna struggle. And with having my parents work so much, um, when I was 10, my parents actually homeschooled me because they didn't want me to be influenced by a lot of the American kids. I actually didn't get to tell you this, but by the American kids, and my mom had gotten pregnant with my sister, so we're a 10-year difference. And I had to basically take care of my sister growing up, and I had to learn my like the education side on my own. I struggled because I just did what I could to get by.
Mm.
I wanted to learn, but I felt like had I not been homeschooled, I think I would be in a better place where I wouldn't struggle as much. But because that happened, um, to this day as an adult, I kind of have to take an extra step to learn, understand things. But luckily, I pick up and I have the motivation and passion to want to learn things because I'm very open-minded and see that it could take you to many different things in life because I see that these kids who are fortunate to have the education, they're very lucky. Like my sister went to college, she has her master's, and I envy her because she got through school like all these other kids. She got to go to a really good prestigious college in Texas and got her master's. And she will tell me, she's like, I struggled because mom pressured me, and then she got the tail end of that, whereas I didn't. But I wish that I had the chance to be able to have a normal life versus instead I had to be homeschooled to take care of my sister and then teach myself.
Mm. So is it like that desire for like further education? That's very Asian, that's very Filipino too. So that wasn't like, oh, this is imposed on me. That was you wanting that for yourself. And like you started envy your sister because she had that and you had to like figure things out on your own.
Yeah, because it's like, how are you supposed to tell me I'm gonna go to college when like I struggled in school? And yeah, I struggled in school. Granted, I homeschooled, but the thing was I didn't have the help I needed. I needed extra attention to show me, math, to show me some of the things with English, whether it was, the why. Like if I everything I do is with why, and if you don't give me a good explanation, I will always question it because I want to know. Because nowadays I train other managers. Over the years, I became a sergeant in the military, and I learned as I got promoted over time is that in order to be effective is to understand the why. Because when someone starts new or someone is just learning something, you have to understand how to get in their head to maneuver under pressure and how to get them to succeed without, because they're not going to tell you that I don't understand right off the bat, or they're not going to tell you that they're feeling anxiety because of whatever is happening in front of them. Because I went through that and I didn't get to say why.
Hmm.
So now as a trainer, or as you could say, as someone that's always just trying to help other people, it's just always putting myself in their position, reminding myself what I went through to guide that person through everything.
Hmm. What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Like with you mentioned Start with Why by Simon Sinek. I've actually read that book. It was really nice. It's like the why, the what I think was next, and
Uh-huh.
then yeah, the how I think is next after that. But like, what do you mean Start with Why? Is it like trying to see things from someone's perspective? So like, walk me through an example.
Like when it comes to say like for instance right now in the hospitality industry, because of COVID, the food delivery system has, you know, boomed because all the restaurants and stuff had closed down and we had to start doing takeout and do like these touchless delivery, whatever. I had to explain to some people like how to be mindful of how you take accountability of taking orders in so you're not confused when the orders are coming in. And it's very stressful when you start getting a lot of orders because it's just nonstop and there's a system that has to be placed in the kitchen. Now, over time, because of COVID, a lot of customers have learned ways of uh, getting food for free here, where you and I could be like, oh, I'm hungry. Let's do this trick on this restaurant. And you place an order on your phone, and then you tell me to go pick it up, and I find it on my phone because I'm the supposed driver. I go over there and I pick up the food and I hit that I pick it up. But then on your end, you can say you either didn't get it or you cancel it on your end. I already have the food. So you have the food and then you call and make a complaint and get your money back. So when I'm teaching these people that, you know, that are working for me, and it's like, why? You know, when I first started seeing this, I was like, why are people doing it? But there are people who actually figure out ways in the system to be able to get free food. And I have to explain that, like how important it is to see the orders coming in and making sure that it's confirmed and stuff like that. And then whoever is picking it up is picking up the correct order, but then also making sure that if it's a constant issue, that we make sure and follow through that the customer gets the food and the order actually goes through because there are so many things that happen now that most people don't understand like this actually happened and why. So people can get mad and upset over the simplest things, but don't realize there's all these things that are happening that as a business we're trying to prevent because people are figuring out ways how to get free food.
Yeah, yeah.
Why is that happening? How?
Like yesterday I was pretty pissed at like an airline here in the Philippines because like my flight, I was supposed to fly to Taiwan and then it got canceled. Like I had to rebook a couple of times, and I was like, it was like I was supposed to get like a $200 refund, and I was just so attached to that $200 refund. It's like, why are you guys, why is this not working anymore? And I was like, okay, wait a minute. As a business owner myself, I understand that they're like going through hardship. Obviously, like the airline industry has been through shit for the past two
Mhm.
years, and I was like, okay, I'll just chill my tits out and like, okay, just let that be.
Yeah, it's just now you just have to just kind of learn to just be more understanding with it.
Yeah, totally. So you've been like right now you're managing a like a restaurant which is in hospitality, which is so far like nobody would like expect like the military and like hospitality. Those two worlds are kind of like almost very different because it's like in the military, it's like you don't complain for shit. And like in hospitality, you deal with people who are always complaining and like never satisfied. What like
Correct.
let's backtrack a little bit. You know, when your parents told you that you'd be a nurse or they wouldn't support you, like you could have like gone for other jobs, I don't know, like other careers. What pushed you to be in the military?
I've always loved the just glamorizing the military. I grew up watching Top Gun, G.I. Jane, and admired all the things about the military. My parents actually thought I was crazy for liking it so much because I was such a rebellious child. How could I even survive the military?
Yeah.
Um, but it was just more of just like there was just so much pride in what they did.
Mm.
Just it did. I did. This is before me knowing the benefits. This is before me knowing that there was travel and all these things that you'd embark. I was just the fact that there was just so much pride in it growing up that I wanted to do that.
What about it exactly? Was it like saving a child? Like if you could go back to like take us down to memory lane, what was that like moment or the accumulation of moments where you're like, yep, I wanna try that someday.
I think it was just more of getting into something and knowing that I would be out of my comfort zone and it'd be something that not everyone is able to experience.
Mm.
And I just say that because it's like you don't randomly just be like, I'm gonna go propel down a 20-foot wall. I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go in the middle of nowhere with just a tent and build a tent and lay here in the cold. You know,
So you
no
didn't
one's
know you didn't know you were getting into those things at all.
yeah, you don't really, you just kind of, and the thing that my mindset is, could I get through this?
Mm.
The process of going through all that training was to try to mentally break you, and then build you back up
Mm.
because they want to break you so that you knew how to handle yourself under pressure when you're at your lowest and being able to fight through it.
So how did you like your parents? I'm gonna give it to them. They made a pretty good question there. So how did a really rebellious kid survive in the military?
Um, I will say that I had a hard time through training because I had really bad shin splints that over the course of my 6 years in the service, I ended up being bilateral shin fractures. Um, yeah, but because of it, I just kept pushing through. It made it hard to run back then. Now it's sometimes, some days it's hard for me to walk, now. But I just told myself I didn't want to go back home as a failure. Like I was like, I refused. I did whatever I could. I took painkillers, I wrapped my legs, I did everything I could possibly do, stretch, ice baths, everything so that I could push through the pain, so I could pass training and hope that I would just get better over time.
What I
Did it,
admire
just fractures, but
what I admire about what you did is you like I for some reason because I'm not like this, I guess. I admire people who are like able to make a decision and no matter how hard it gets, they like commit to that decision. Because I guess what I would do if I were you is like, oh fuck this shit, this is not for me. I'm probably like gonna consider other options and
uh,
probably like quit, which you like didn't do. You're like saw it through. So what was it
yeah,
about that made you
because
suffering so much?
you remember I said my parents every time I would throw something at, I wanted to be a chef, I wanted to be a cop, I wanted to play basketball, I want to do this, I want to do that. They shut it down.
Hmm.
And I didn't want to be like, I want to do this. And then they'd be like, oh, here you go again.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to
Mm.
hear it.
So it's like you were doing it. You were like wrapping your shin up with those like bandages. Just having that voice at the back of your head was like, they will not say this to me. They will not say that I cannot do this. Blah blah blah. They're like,
Right.
okay, wow, that's a pretty strong motivator.
Yeah, I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear that I couldn't make it. I didn't want to hear it later on in life and be like, see, I told you.
Hmm.
I just
Yeah.
was not having it.
Yeah, that would be so annoying. And like in the military, we talked about this, but for those who weren't listening, because like if I were like listening to us right now, I would assume that the hardest thing you've been through in the military is like seeing people just like be shot dead. But to you, that wasn't the most traumatizing experience. So what was like the most traumatizing thing that you've experienced in the military?
Hmm, I think more so of in Afghanistan, you could just be walking, and if you hear a whistle that just it's like a if you just hear that,
Mm.
it's just kind of like you stop and you just pray and hope that it doesn't land near you. And or you look around as quick as you can and take cover.
Why? Is that like a
Rocket,
missile?
yeah, a
Wow.
rocket. Because the Taliban would do it right when the sun's going down.
Wow. And when that happens, what would the casualty be usually?
Luckily, when I was there, it wasn't that bad. We had one that got hurt, that only because he ran outside to tell people to take cover and happened to get shrapnel in the process of telling people to take cover. But usually, how the Taliban operates when the sun goes down, usually it's not just one rocket; it's followed by multiple rockets at a time. Some days it's two or three, some days it's five or six. Usually, if it's more than three and it's up to the like five, six, seven range, it's usually pretty bad because that's when you start hoping that it's not one of those things where they actually attack the base to the point where we all have to man our stations, kind of thing.
Wow. Like the one thing that I'm most curious about, and I don't know if this question is offensive, is like, but if it is offensive, do give me grace.
Go ahead, go ahead, ask.
Just really fucking curious. Like, what do you think made you survive? Like having gone through all those things, like, and that's like, it's not like it's a one-time thing. So it's like a fluke that you survived. It's like you actually fucking went through it after like so many days, so many weeks, so many months.
Hmm. Yeah, I went two deployments, one Iraq, one Afghanistan. I think it was just, I was determined that I was gonna come back home. Um, but what some people don't realize is that I also had made a will uh when I was 20.
Wow.
So, I already had everything drawn up and had everything prepared if in case that didn't happen.
Mm.
But what got me through it was, I mean, honestly, I just was just trying to get through each day. Just because Afghanistan, we had where the government had a budget cut here in the States, and it affected the military to where we were limited to supply and food. So we were able to eat hot food, but it was like once a day towards the tail end of our deployment. And then we would have like these MREs, which are like in the bag, and they're ready to eat. And then we'd have fruits and sandwiches that we would put out for the soldiers. But other than that, like we had one hot meal a day, and we would send off the contractors because we had people like Filipinos and other people from other countries that would come in as contractors, and they would, do haircuts or have a little shop there just to like help us, keep the spirits there, kind of thing, where it's like we get excited when you get us, some Oreos, some chips,
Aw.
or being able to get hygiene stuff, like little stuff like that.
Mm.
So when I'd get care packages, I'd always ask for Oreos, Pringles, stuff like that. And it sounds silly, but it's kind of like growing up watching my mom send balikbayan boxes of things to send to the Philippines growing up. It's similar to how it was for me there because it was like I just wanted little snacks because It reminds me of when I was a kid that I could just eat when I'm in like a really crappy place. And I just want to be able to keep my spirits and my mind, you know, positive, regardless of where I'm at. And I have my Oreos.
Yeah. Even though like there's Taliban this afternoon, you got your Oreos. I was like,
Oreos.
not too
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah, I know it sounds silly and crazy, but it is. Like
It makes
I
sense.
got my M&Ms, and I remember one time this was the silliest thing. And if any of my counterparts see this and that remember this, but at one point we got attacked by a rocket, and I was in a building full of girls. And by this time I was already over it. I was just kind of like, whatever, I'm done with these rockets. And I had my M&Ms and I rolled over from my cot and I just started eating my M&Ms and I hear some girls like crying. My other friend was next to me and she rolled over also and was reading her book
You
and
guys
she
were
was
just
looking
over
at
it.
me.
You just were like, fuck the shit.
Yeah, basically. And then my other friend next to me, she was one of my roommates in Afghanistan, and she looks over at me and she takes her headphones out and then I'm just eating my M&Ms, and then I was just like, "What? I'm over this."
Yeah. So you wrote your will at 20, which for someone to be able to do that, just for context, guys, when you write your will, you acknowledge that you're probably gonna die early, right?
Right.
How is that like for you, like coming to terms with mortality and that you might not be able to come back to your parents in one piece or at least alive?
I think it was so surreal when I went to go do my will because they asked me like, where do you want to be buried? How much was your life insurance? How do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? Like all these questions and things that as a 20-year-old you're just like, why?
What?
And when it hit me though, I was like, I mean, being the rebellious child that I was like, I'm gonna get buried here in America. I'm not going to the Philippines. And then, I'm calling my mom. She's like, well, I'm gonna send you to the Philippines and have a proper burial there if something ever happened to you. And I was like, no.
But you really did want to get buried, if ever, like in America, right?
Yeah, I was very adamant that I wanted full military honors. I want to be buried here. I wanted to make note of all that because I didn't want my parents to send me back to the Philippines to get buried if anything happened.
Wow.
And it was just one of those things where I was like, wow, I never thought I would have to sit here and think about that. And
Wow.
then when I found myself on the plane going and I step foot and look around like this is really happening. Like I literally joined the military and then 10 months later I was in Iraq.
Fuck.
So yeah, it was very fast.
What are the things that people don't know about being in the military? Because when we talked last time, it's like sometimes people forget that you guys are still humans and you need to pee and you need to take a shit. And there are those because when people hear like, oh, like a soldier, like someone from the army, it's like, ooh, there's always that kind of like respect and like intrigue and like I'm gonna be honest, like when I see me some army guy, it's always like a little bit of sexiness there. And that's I think it's always like the highlights that people see. So what like how is it like on the inside? Like open the curtains for us.
I mean, I can, like when we're getting a rocket attack, some people don't tell you, like me and my friends, you just had dinner and drank a shit ton of water or Gatorade, and you're waiting to be cleared to be able to step outside because we're making sure that the base is not attacked, and you're having to pee or you need to take a shit. Like no one tells you like you have to hold that shit in. It got to a point where when I was having I a friend of mine had sent me a care package of this mojito flavored water. Like I just put it in my thing. It's like Kool-Aid, but it's mojito flavor because when I was in Korea, I drank a lot. So when I came to the States, I was always drinking and I missed drinking. So they gave me some type of memory of drinking. So they gave me this mojito flavored drink that I just put in my water. And I drank like 6 liters of it because I was like, oh, this is so good. And I got a little overboard and then we got under attack and I had to pee so bad. And luckily, one of my other friends, she had to pee so bad. So she's like, let's go outside. You pull security while I pee. And then when I finish, I pull security and you pee. And I was like, seriously? So we go out in the back in the dark and she's behind me and she's peeing and she's like squatting and she's just like, do you see anything? I'm like, no, I don't even see a silhouette. I was like, all I hear is you peeing right now, and I don't even know if there's a freaking Taliban coming or not.
Damn. I love how you're just like laughing about it, but I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure
I
when you
mean,
were in
it's
that
funny now
situation.
because it's just like you don't, no one tells you stories like this.
Yeah. And like I love how now you're laughing, but I'm pretty sure when you guys were like going through it, like you probably like at least I would be scared shitless. Cause like
We did laugh about it at the after the fact because when we ran back in, um, her girl looked over at us and was shaking her head like I can't fucking believe you two just did that.
well, so that those are like some of the untold stories about the military. But I'm wondering, oh my god, I don't even know if I could like survive there. It's just like maybe too much for me. How is it like to be a girl in the military? Do you get treated like, to like protect the women and children, or is it like fuck you, you're here, we're all equals?
Um, it's a little bit of both. I mean, I can speak for the army, I will say. I don't know how it is in other branches. I've heard it's a little different in other branches, but in the army, it's different. There's not that many females to begin with. And some girls get in and they're very just they're like untouchable. They're very like driven to make rank and make it out of their career, get something good out of it. And then there's some girls who use being a girl to get by in the military, whether it's they can't pass physically, or they can't pass because they're overweight or they're not meeting the standards. So they find ways to sleep around and try and get out of certain things because of that. And it makes it kind of hard because some girls end up being labeled as those females who just use themselves to get by. And it kind of sucks because for the females who actually are very driven to move up the ranks and become something of themselves, they try really hard not to be looked at by their male counterparts as that.
So okay, there's still that bit of like fuck, I don't know if this girl is actually fucking serious or she's like gonna fuck me over. What is I was imagining like sexual tensions, like, oh, she's hot, but it's like I didn't see that part because like I think I assumed that because, um it's an either or where it's like you either get protected or they're like, there's a girl here in the camp. And I guess I never really considered, from like a guy's perspective how it would be for them. But what is it like in terms of like relationships and sexuality in the service?
Um, I mean, if you're in a deployment and there's maybe a handful of girls only, I'd say 10 girls out of 800 guys.
Yeah.
I mean, something's going to happen.
Mm.
It's kind of, it's a given. I mean, if nothing happened, those are the few and the rare ones. But something always happens.
Mm. And you had like an experience with this, right? And it's scarred you.
Well, in Iraq, I had experienced sexual trauma,
Mm.
of which I didn't speak of then because of, again, like I said, some females kind of get looked at like, oh, let's just transfer her to another company or unit and just forget about it. So that way it's not a problem. And but the thing is, it kind of, not say it follows you, but if you run into the same people in your old unit, it they'll remember it. And I didn't want that to follow my career. I wanted to go through my career in a clean slate of actually being where I got to, as for my hard work, not because I went through some trauma and I said, "Oh my goodness, this happened to me. Can you do something about it?" Like I didn't want that pity party thing or that little treatment given to me because of it. I wanted to work hard for my rank.
To be in a girl there and for it to not be a safe place for you, and to have something like that like happen where it's like you did not consent to it at all, it's horrible. And I respect and admire the fact that you just like probably sat down and you were like logically thinking about how you wanted it to look like on your career. Was it like just that factor that you had, or was there like anything fear based that came from that decision of not, escalating that issue?
It was that factor. It was because of my career. Um, what was it, 2 years ago? Um, it was brought to light of another female soldier who went through something similar. But what happened with her was she got murdered.
What?
Which I can share with you later. But because of it, that escalated across the board for females, over the years to step forward and
Mm,
bring it to light because um, some people did it for the fear of life, some people did it because of fear of career, some people just feared just because they didn't want to be treated differently. So because of it, I it triggered for me to come forward also because it was like it took that to bring a spotlight to something like that.
wow. It's almost like she became the sacrificial lamb, which is unfortunate.
Correct.
Damn. Walk me through like being in Iraq, because you said there's like something like there were things that you've experienced that when you came to your family, when you went back home, you were like, guys, I can't pretend that those things didn't happen. What were those certain moments in Iraq or Afghanistan?
Like I came home from leave from Iraq, and my mom's over here questioning me, why am I brushing my teeth in the dark with with water bottle? Stuff like that. Kind of, it took some time for me to adjust, because I was doing it overseas.
Hmm.
And then certain scents or sounds, um, always kind of for a split second, I have to kind of look around and make sure it's nothing. Um, Thankfully, my PTSD isn't severe. It's mild. But I think because of everything that I went through in the service, um, my PTSD might be mild, but my depression was triggered and is moderate over my PTSD.
Mm,
Only because the why, here we go again with the why, the how, the what, um, trying to fill those questions, it's hard to answer when you've experienced life and death situations. When you experience your peers where, I've only lost a couple from combat, but I've lost, you know, over 5 people from suicide in a course of 10 years.
mm,
Um, it's the why that is very depressing because we come back here trying to be more happy and be more appreciative of life. But when you start seeing all these other things and you see how everyone is, it's kind of sad.
Mm. Yeah, because it's like you guys almost had like this, I would say, because I was just on acid like very recently, like something very similar, but obviously, obviously something more serious too. And then everybody else is just like the same, just like walking through life, like la 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 la. So it's
Yeah.
it's a very different, because like you also mentioned too that when you were in Iraq, you also had an experience or a moment with some girls who like told you like what's the point of finishing high school if they were being sold as sex slaves anyway. What other things like that in Iraq did you like experience that kind of like shifted your perspective of life a little bit or a lot bit?
I mean, that argument I had with an Iraqi girl, it's like I felt like I sounded like my own mother, like you need to finish school.
Yeah.
At the same time, I was like, how would I even begin to make her see the bright side out of this or the light at the end of the tunnel? Because I don't know if she would even make it out of the place alive, let alone at the time, well, who's to say she was to get sold from by her dad just so that they could have money to eat. Like, who's to say that that was the case? Stuff like that happened, and it's a thing over there. And it's like, what are you supposed to say to these girls who just like, what's the point?
Yeah. And what did you tell her? Did you still tell her like finish high school?
I just say finish school and keep trying to like make something of yourself. And in my mind, I'm like, try to get a visa to go to the United States or Europe or what, I'm thinking like how it was in the Philippines, like you just try and come here and then work your way up and save up money so you could get your green card and get your citizenship, stuff like that, and have a better life for you, and unfortunately it's not like that. It's a lot harder. When I got out of the service, I worked security for a little bit and I worked with some Afghan interpreters who came to the States protected because they worked with the army before they came to the United States. And I asked them I didn't have to ask the why because I understood that part, but I asked them how and what after that with how did you adjust being here? What did you go through? What happened? Like their full life story of like how did you adjust to the Americans when you came here? Because it's very different customs here. How did you start, understanding that the Americans wasn't going to treat you differently, or one of them told me like, oh, I went to the strip club for the first time. And I was like, how was that? And he was like, it felt nice. And I was like, I'm sure it did.
Yeah. Wow. So what are like have you encountered people who kind of like escaped? Because at least we know the why. We know like they actually that's like some probably last resort for them. Because who in their right mind would sell their daughter as a sex slave? It's probably like really fucking desperate. But it's like where's like the light at the end of the tunnel? Like if let's say we were those girls who were being sold, like how the fuck do we like how do we think? How do we like process that and strategize to kind of like escape? Do you have like any ideas?
That's the thing. I don't know because for those girls, I can't even fathom on how they could have thought at the light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm,
When that thing happened back in August with Afghanistan and the United States and us pulling out of Afghanistan, and then all these Afghans that we were trying to evacuate. I'm sure you guys heard about. I was very upset over it because I knew that they needed to get out of there because if they didn't, that was their life.
yeah.
Um, it's sad and it's frustrating to watch. And some were fortunate to get out and some didn't.
Wow. I'm just like trying to put myself in your shoes that if I were you, like how I would process that. And then coming home to, a mom who obviously I think she loves you. I think she loves you. I could be wrong. I think she loves you. But like coming home to her and just being told platitudes to what
Oh,
was that
her
like?
her thing is don't let the stuff bother you. You need to just focus and really just try to like, I guess you could say like protect or put this sugar coating over my world
Hmm.
to where it shouldn't and wouldn't affect me, so to speak. But what she doesn't understand and realize is that I have been more exposed to things that she couldn't imagine or understand, that for you to tell me don't let that affect you, don't be the influence, because when I seeked therapy for my PTSD and my depression, I knew that I don't say it hit my mom, but I think it kind of took my parents back a bit, because it it's not a thing for for Filipinos
Hmm.
really to just go do that. You like that's just not a thing. Like,
Yeah, because there's always a stigma of like, are you crazy? Like, is there something wrong with your head? Like, why would you do that?
right.
It's just
Yeah,
lack
it's
of
the stigma.
education.
Yes, correct. It's the stigma is we don't go to therapy, or we don't have that issue. We don't have that problem. It's not a thing.
Yeah, it's
So
like other kids could have that, but not us.
yeah, my daughter does not have that. I'm like,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Wow. So how was that like? Because I'm pretty sure, transitioning from a place of like, fuck, we didn't eat today, or tomorrow we got to eat, to like a normal life. There, I'm pretty sure you had like a ton of adjustment there. Did you feel like your family was on board with supporting you, or was there a lack of that?
It was a lack of that at the very beginning of it, because they couldn't understand why I did certain things. And then at the same time, even to this day, they're just kind of like, you're not in the military anymore, quit thinking like that, or quit walking or talking like that. Because when I first got out, everything was fuck, shit, motherfucker, like anything you think of. I was always angry, and it took time for me to adjust, because I realized that as I go into civilian world, go to corporate life, you don't say fuck, shit, motherfucker, that twat.
Yeah,
You don't use that vocabulary.
yeah.
Um,
Especially in the hospitality industry, like, you motherfucker, just be happy with
correct.
your order, bitch.
Correct. So I learned how to tune that out. But my face, anyone that knows me, is that with my face is that I kind of just get quiet, and I just have this look towards just like I really want to fight you, but I'm not.
Mm. Wow, must take so much restraint
It
from you.
does.
Yeah.
It does.
What was it like for you coping with PTSD and life after the army? Because I feel like that's not really talked about a lot. Like, yes, we glorify people who've been in the army, but like the follow through, like, how were you guys after? It's really not much of that.
Um, I didn't seek help till maybe a year and a half, 2 years later after I got out. I got out and just kind of was just like, I'm free. I'm gonna figure out my career, do this, and just kind of like I just had the world in my hand, like where I just saw, bits and pieces of different parts of the world. I wanted to take the world on, with little knowledge of what society or what I was walking into. And then when I finally was getting help, that's where I had to learn, what is it called, cognitive behavior process, of anytime I found my anxiety or my stress get triggered, of like stop and then think of like the what, why, how, and is this benefiting me, and taking the steps to like readjusting my mind and how I'm feeling at that moment so that I can not have anxiety or not let it affect me or stress me out to trigger my PTSD or my depression. Um, I I to this day still have to go through that. And even to this day, like I just finished therapy for my cancer, just because, I went through all this therapy and people were talking to me and treating me differently. And it's like, what's the word, like what's the difference? And people are just giving me this like this look like I'm gonna die.
Poor,
And
yeah,
it's
yeah, this poor kid
weird.
look, yeah.
It's weird because it's just like I should be used to this. Like I went to the military and deployed, and people sometimes will look at you and be like, you just don't know if you come back or not. And it's just some stuff like you just kind of get accustomed to
Yeah.
the routine of things of people, and then when you get hit with something out of your control and people start looking at you differently, it's like it's a whole nother process for me to be like, I literally went and survived 2 deployments, and then I get sick and everyone's looking at me like, you're gonna get through this, and I'm just like, what's going
Yeah.
what?
So you're really like a fucking fighter because not only did you survive 2 deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan, you also kicked cancer's ass. Which, by the way, I salute you so much for that. And your hair looks fucking beautiful.
I was fortunate enough that chemo that I took was very a low dosage, so I didn't have to lose my hair, thankfully. I was actually, one of the nurses said when I first went in, and they're like, you're not gonna lose your hair, and I was like, oh, thank God, because I was like, it's going to like hit me the minute I lose my hair, but thankfully I didn't have to lose it.
Yeah, it's freaking beautiful. Your hair looks awesome.
Thank you.
What was it? What do you think caused the cancer? Do you think it had anything to do with
My
what you went
military
through?
career.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually in the process right now with my disability to see if they would look into it more, from my military sexual trauma,
Mm.
in correlation to the cancer. I had to actually get a partial hysterectomy, so I could still technically have kids, but the thing is that I also went through radiation, so that probably fried my
Wow. Yeah.
ovaries.
You're so
So
young too, and like fuck.
I know, like I know this. I know you're probably like, why are you laughing to this? But the thing is like I tell my mom like, well, there goes my good looks, sayang, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And my mom's like, of all the things, that's what you're thinking of. I went through surgery, 10 hours of surgery. And, she was like, you need to go walk and go around the nurse's station. And I'm like, okay, let me go walk in this little walker and check out my nurses and see if my nurses are hot or not.
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, you're seriously thinking of all this shit while
Yeah.
I'm like, oh. I was like, I got my hair done, got
Same.
my lashes done before I went to surgery. Hello.
Yeah. I love it. I love it.
Like, you want me to look like a cancer kid right now? No.
Yeah. 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 And did you find a couple hot nurses?
I saw a couple, but not enough for me to like say hi because I'm too chicken shit sometimes. I'm all this talk and I have all this like game and pickup lines, but sometimes I just be like,
Yeah. Do you have a girlfriend right now?
no, I do not.
Okay, so still actively searching. Yes, fact, she's still very much actively searching, very much single. So, if you wanna like, hit her up, we're gonna give you her details at the end of this episode. What was it like going through therapy and processing your PTSD?
I was at the very beginning, I was always angry because I was like, are you serious? Like, why can't I be angry? It's like, I think the one of the things my therapist asked me was, why does it piss you off that they look at you weird?
Mm.
And I was like, because they don't fucking understand. And this goes back to, like when I came here to the States as a kid, like I used to be mad because the American kids would be like, ew, what are you eating?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the fuck? And as I grew older, I guess that still stuck with me. And so it's like I went into the service and then I'm getting help because I'm always angry and depressed and all this stuff happening with me. And it's like I was just trying to fit in.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wanted to understand. I envied the people I dated this girl who was in a sorority, and I was like hanging out with her and her sorority girls, and they were talking about Beyonce's album. And I had nothing to say because I didn't know about her album. I didn't know what was going on with Beyonce, and I was just lost in the sauce. And I felt very like out of place, and it affected me,
Mm.
like simple little thing like that. And granted, it's like, who cares, it's Beyonce? But it's just like now I could sit here and say that. But back then I was like, I don't even know what it's like to go to a class at college and you guys have this bond and get to talk about this album, or you found out such and such is dating blah blah blah, or this show, and I was literally in a country where I didn't get to see any of this stuff happening. I just had to come back to the States and pick up where I left off, and everyone has all these stories, and you're just like
Yeah.
sitting there just quiet because what can you say? What people don't understand is that we're trying to adjust and fit in the family life, or trying to build relationships, or even be successful at a job, not just a career, but just even stay with a job. But sometimes it's hard to adjust ourselves to be able to fit in a job, career, school, a relationship, or a family, to say the least.
Mm.
I mean, even to this day, one of my titas that is my mom's best friend, uh, I hadn't seen her since I joined the military, and she's like, "Can you stop like walking like you're about to beat somebody up? Like you're walking like you're not in the army anymore." And I'm like, I didn't say anything because I was just like, I'm not gonna waste my air or my breath to just be like, it's harder than you realize, Tita,
Yeah.
that you can't just turn it off.
Yeah. What do you what do you think this has to do with your therapy? Like how much of your PTSD has to do, and this is just a genuine curiosity that I have.
Hmm.
How much of it has to do with issues from childhood and your experience in the military?
My issues with childhood and experience with military, I'd say probably quite a bit, because growing up with strict Filipino parents and then the military itself, um, you learn to be selfless. Um, you learn honor in what you do. And it's the same thing being in a Filipino family, like take honor in your name and what you're doing.
Yeah.
But to like serious
Yeah.
extent of like what it is that you're doing, but also like it's life or death also. Um, I'm not gonna lie that when I was deployed, death didn't scare me. It never quite scared me. I think I was just duly prepared, knowing that that's what I signed up for. That's something that my parents didn't understand and would be like, no, you're gonna bury me first and stuff like that. But it's just like it's hard for them to accept when I throw it back in their face, not in a bad way, but just kind of like throw it back in their face that everything that they taught me growing up, I can turn this tables around to them, and then make them kind of not say question the the values that they instilled in me, but to kind of be like, well, you said this growing up, and then I escalated to the more of a life and death situation, and it's like,
That's that that kind of like bewilders me a little bit because usually when people have a certain upbringing, it's kind of like it's very natural for them to go against that. But you just fucking like ran into it and like made it even more hardcore. So it's kind of like, you know, take honor in your name, blah blah blah, and you join the fucking military. It just
Yeah. It's, I
real.
mean, that it's funny because when I went through my surgery and my mom, she's been through where she's seen me go through two deployments and I've come home and then she was so relieved that I got out of this military and she didn't have to worry about me going to war anymore. And that was the end of that. She just has to make sure that, you know, I grew up and was fine. And
Mm.
then when I, you know, went through all the stuff with my cancer, I had to have my surgery. You know, she came down here from Texas and she's like, I'm gonna stay with you and I'm gonna make sure the nurses know who I am. And I'm like, it's COVID and we're in California also. It's worse than how it is in Texas. I don't know who you think you are. And she was just very adamant, like she knew what she was doing. And when I got dropped off at the hospital, my friend, my kuya was like, what are you going to do with your mom? Like, she's just leave her with you to the hospital. You're going to be in surgery for 10 hours. And I looked over at my mom and I was like, bahala sa buhay mo. I said, now you know how I feel. And then I walked my happy ass into the hospital.
It's hilarious. It's hilarious. Oh
And
wow.
then when she came the next day, I looked at her, I'm like, did you stay in my room? No.
But like she definitely came from a place of love and like wanting to make sure you were all right. So she was just like doing her own mom thing, as
She
it were.
was, she was that. But the thing was, is that I'm always trying to like preach to her the stuff that I go through to understand it because I want her to understand my thought process.
Mm.
During the process of my chemo, she was with me for that time frame, and that was the most time she spent with me since I was a kid.
Wow.
Um, because you know when I left home, it was that was that. So she actually had to see how I was, and the one thing I learned from the military that she had to see was like resiliency, was bouncing back. Like I would remind myself, like there's people who don't have arms and legs or certain things that they can or cannot do, and they have to get up every morning and still show face. They still have to, you know, try and get through the day. So it's like I needed to be able to get up and walk. And granted, I was able to walk, but I had a cane that I was trying to get myself up and going. And it was frustrating because it was like I've been through all this stuff and I'm physically trying to just be able to just go to the bathroom or be able to just get myself out of bed. Then you know things you don't really realize, like you use your stomach a lot to just be able to sit up. And I had to use a cane to try and push myself, and my mom would be there to help me and I'd always fight with her and be like, no, you know, because I don't want to be like relying on the help. Because growing up, you know, I would see my mom tend to her patients and I would watch all these Filipino movies where it's like you watch these people get taken care of because they physically can't do it anymore. And I am too young to be relying on someone to be helping me up. So I had to make sure that I could still manage on my own because I'm not going to sit here and expect my mom to be by my side forever.
Yeah.
Because growing up, she'd be like, I'm not always going to be here forever. And and I was like, okay, here I am.
Yeah. But you've taken like literally what she told you before and like even in the most extreme scenario.
Yeah.
Like she was
Pretty
probably thinking like, what the fuck is wrong with my kid?
Pretty much. I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's
you
like
say you're not gonna always be here forever. You're out, you know, gallivanting, traveling, whatever, or you go back to the Philippines, go back to the Philippines then. I'm walking. I got it. I got it.
yeah, yeah. How is she now in terms of like understanding where you're coming from with the transition?
She still worries. She's still always checking to make sure that I'm okay. I know recently she came down for my birthday, and I just recently started on medication for my PTSD and my depression. Not just because of me just going through all the cancer stuff, but I think just maybe because from getting out of the service to always going out, trying to kind of like relive what I missed out during the time I was in, and always focusing on my career. And then all of a sudden, it literally took cancer for me to just stop, slow down in life, and just kind of like rest and chill out. Um, I will say that mentally, it has, I say taken a toll, but mentally, it's kind of like kept me at home more. I'm a little bit more to myself nowadays than back then. I'd always be out at the club, I'd be at the bar, I'd be everywhere, and my friends would be like, I can't take you anywhere because everyone knows who you are. Now it's just like I moved to San Diego from LA, and I haven't really gone out too much. But only because I'm still just kind of, I think, trying to figure out what my next move is, like what's my focus, because not only did I learned to physically push myself from the military, and then mentally push myself growing up because I didn't have the support and someone there to teach me on the education wise, and just pray I would get through life in a career that now I'm doing. But to go through cancer and then to realize, like, not only did I get challenged mentally and physically, but like what happens when you go through both things but still go through cancer, and then you're just cancer free, and then you're supposed to pick up where you left off again.
Wow.
Like, how do you even go about that?
Maybe
Because
maybe you're not. Maybe you're not supposed to pick up where you left off. Maybe you're supposed to chart a new course.
that's probably why I kind of like taking the back seat to things right now, where it's like, what where am I what am I doing next?
Mm, yeah. It's always a question that a lot of, like, at least, a lot of us, if we had more courage to do, that would be something that we'd be doing like every couple of years or so. And I think that's really important because, a lot of people, they just feel stuck, or they feel, like something's wrong, but they never really take the time to like chill the fuck out. And I think that was the same for you, because it took it took cancer to literally
Go
like,
out.
it's like that ass whooping that you probably needed, because you were just like going and going and going and going.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I was like superwoman. Like, I thought that I could just pick up where I left off. Like, I went through the military, I adjusted, I transitioned. Good, I got it. I did it because even to this day, some certain things I want to do, like I want to go out and party and do certain things, or get back into working out, and I can feel physically it's not the same.
Mm,
And it's kind of hard because I knew that I was in shape. I knew that I could just eat whatever I wanted. I could just drink all night long, or I could stay up all night. I knew that I was able to do all these things, and then all of a sudden it's like my body just kind of smacked me in the face, and I was like, no, the fuck you can't.
wow. Wow. What was it again? I was talking to this like former playmate about somatic therapy. Oh yeah. It to, are you going through that as well? It says here, I just literally googled it. Like, somatic therapy helps treat post traumatic stress and effects from other mental health conditions.
Not yet. I'm actually on a wait list right now to do any kind of therapy right now.
Really? So
Yeah.
you're actively still wanting to get into it.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna introduce you to someone. I'm not sure if you're gonna love her. I'm not sure if it's gonna be for you, but I think it's probably worth it. I've seen miraculous things happen, not only for other people, but for myself, having gone through like that kind of
Okay.
therapy. Yeah. What do you what do you wish more people knew about veterans who are transitioning?
To be patient with them and to follow through and be consistent with what you say with them. Because if you're not patient with them, it takes us time to understand what it is you want out of us. And then also it takes consistency and follow through. If you're trying to fix something, do something with us, we seek, not say structure, but we seek seeing and hearing things that we know, like if you want us to do this, like tell me if I'm doing it right or
Mm,
wrong, and how do
right.
you want.
Because that's how you guys were kind of like conditioned in the military.
Right. Well, that, but that was also how it's also something I lacked growing up as a kid because I was always told something, but never told if this was
There's
the
no
way or not.
feedback.
Correct.
Wow.
So,
Patience. Wow.
yeah.
Because I guess it's like not a lot of people really consider the follow through of like, yeah, sure, they've done amazingly, they've survived, and now they're doing their best to thrive, but there's really not much talk on the experience of post army. And I guess I've always wondered why, if someone's like, if someone's been in the army and they meet somebody who's also been in the army, it's just like literally immediate kinship. It's like immediately they're like best friends. I guess it's that compassion, because that's also one of the words that you kind of like um you were implying. It's like that compassion, that patience for people who've been through those things, knowing that your reality isn't really the same as their reality anymore because they've gone through so much.
Yes. That's it's that. And then it's kind of like you tell me a story and I tell you a story, and I could laugh about it or talk about it of how we felt or we feel a type of way about something because you've somehow walked my shoes also.
Mm,
It's kind of like similar bond, like say for us, I could probably tell you stories about my upbringing and you could probably relate to it.
yeah, yeah.
So
I guess our difference is just like you had your parents, but you defied them, and mine is like I didn't have them, so they have no reason to question why I'm defying them. I was just like my way or the highway all the time.
that's how my parents were, my way or the highway, but then their thing was always uh mark my words, try me, huh? And then for me, I'm like, okay.
Yeah. And you just
This is
saw things through, and you were like literally just a fucking freedom warrior, because you weren't all talking about freedom and then you came back home and like started begging them for scraps or to like take you back. You actually like fought into deployments to like get the freedom that you wanted, and to be able to show them that you don't have to be what they want you to be, that you can make something out of yourself by yourself. And I think
right,
it's very powerful. Denise, that this
right.
is like fucking awesome, and you're like a breath of fresh air. My boyfriend is definitely gonna listen to this episode. I think he's already listening, like back there. I want you to like complete this sentence, and this is the last thing that I'm gonna be asking you.
Okay.
Denise breaks the mold by.
Denise breaks the mold by having empathy.
Wow, that's a
I think if you asked me this years ago, I probably would have been like Denise breaks the mold by having confidence, but that's very broad.
mm,
And I just say that because I used to say having confidence in what you do transitioning out or having the background of strict parents because you want to capture the room and you want to capture hush, hold on, have to capture the attention that you're trying to influence is, like you have to carry yourself with such a strong demeanor. But the thing is, I think over time I've learned to have more empathy so that people have more of an understanding of how to be influential by actually understanding your audience more.
Yeah,
It
because
is,
you're
it's not
seeing,
about us, it's
yeah,
understand your audience.
yeah, because you're seeing where they're coming from.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's the only way to be able to get them to open up, get more feedback, and then have them talk about it more to others so that they could also, that it's like we're more closed off. We don't really talk about this stuff. We don't, it's something we don't, it's behind the curtain, like you said. And the more we bring more awareness to it as an audience, we are able to make a difference.
Mm, totally. All right, that is Denise Diaz, everyone, and she's also a fur mama. Like I believe a lot of you are out there. Denise, thank you so much for shedding light on your experiences and for just being fucking honest and vulnerable. I was literally at the bar the other day, and like I think our normal, like most people are almost everybody's normal is just like having a facade and trying to just like posture so much, and you're just like such a fucking breath of fresh air. Your experiences are like fucking amazing, and I just want to thank you for coming on and inspiring literally everybody who's listening.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Pussy Power. And obviously, this lady right here has so much power and also a pussy. And she is so fucking amazing. All right. That is it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. And I will see you on the next episode.